Hello and welcome to Central Planning Approaches. I'm Adam Reed from the Renewable and Sustainable Energy Institute in Boulder, Colorado, USA. In this webinar, we'll cover approaches to system expansion used in unified, vertically integrated power systems like monopolistic investor-owned utilities or state-owned utilities. First off, what drives system development? The major factor in many systems, and particularly for those in the developing world, is increasing demand. Our lives are becoming more energy intensive every year, continuing a trend that began in 1850 and hasn't stopped since. Moreover, hundreds of millions of people who never had access to modern energy before are now getting that access and striving toward the same level of consumption as the rest of us. As more people use more energy, utilities must plan to keep up with growth rates. For vertically integrated utilities, meeting this demand on time is especially important, as it is part of their regulatory compact that secures protection of their monopoly. They must serve everyone in the service territory. Fuel switching may also drive system development, such as the sudden appearance of an apparently cheaper fuel source. This happened in Europe and the United States in the 1970s as nuclear power became popular. It is happening again now in the US with a sudden abundance of natural gas. Because switching fuels involves building new plants, such decisions are often accompanied by new construction of both generation and transmission assets. An additional factor is aging infrastructure. As baseload power plants and transmission lines age, they must eventually be replaced. When it comes time to do so, utilities will often try to anticipate new demand increases at the same time, and so will build new infrastructure larger than the old retiring infrastructure. Finally, increasing demand for renewable energy, driven both by policy mandates and decreasing renewable energy costs, is changing the location of generation assets and requiring build-outs of large-scale transmission where it has never been needed before. The gold standard for expanding power systems is known as Integrated Resource Planning, or IRP. IRP is a means of looking at all of a utility's existing assets, projecting demand several years out, and then determining the best mix of investments to meet that demand at least cost. This is a valuable approach because it considers alternative pathways and recognizes the interchangeable nature of many system assets for total performance. For example, a system that only forecasted future demand and always built new power plants to meet all of it might miss the much cheaper alternative of building a transmission line to a neighboring system which has plenty of extra capacity. By examining all options, IRP can result in lower system costs. In sustainability spheres, IRP is best known for its role in driving utility consideration of demand response and energy efficiency measures, effectively using demand-side strategies to meet future demand. By controlling demand through response tactics and energy efficiency programs, utilities could avoid having to build new power plants and meet all of the needs of its customers at lower cost. IRP is not done solely behind the closed doors of the utility. In most electric power systems with centralized control, the public is involved in such decisions through regulatory approval. Thus, external factors like social and environmental preferences can influence the IRP's resource combination. Likewise, some IRP processes are moving beyond a combination of efforts to meet new demand and asking about a utility's goals as a social enterprise. For centrally planned systems, the IRP process is a critical mechanism through which system transformation to sustainability might occur. Recall from the last lecture that one of the big economic hurdles to building new transmission is ensuring that the new line can be fully utilized. For a centrally planned system, that means utilities must plan for sufficient new generation to fill new transmission lines. China, which has a centrally controlled grid assisted by 5 government-owned generation companies, has approached this problem by building wind power bases consisting of clusters of wind farms in wind-heavy areas. These bases are so large and spread over a large enough geographic area as to keep the transmission lines relatively full. It has also planned new conventional power plants in the same areas to make up any differences in line utilization. This works for China because its population's demand for energy is growing so rapidly that it needs to keep building baseload power plants anyway. For economies whose baseload needs are already met, it may be more important to build fast-ramping balancing resources like natural gas, new hydro, and maybe energy storage so as to complement new transmission and assist in the integration of variable renewable energy. The advantages of central planning approaches to system expansion include process efficiency. Placing all the necessary decisions about the power system into a single administrative process may save time and allows for all aspects of the expansion to be considered holistically. Central planning often allows guaranteed rate-based cost recovery for projects that fall under it, which encourages utilities to move forward. The scale of the operation and the prospect of cost recovery may also be a way to attract capital for the expansion at relatively low interest rates. Finally, the public has a single avenue of input into the planning of the entire system through the IRP process, presuming that the country has adequate democratic governance mechanisms that allow for such public input. The potential downsides to central planning may include cost overruns. Because the new projects are selected by regulators and the utilities, things may cost more due to the lack of competitive pressure to finish the project on time and at budget. Utilities may even see such opportunities as a means of inflating the rate base. That's the capital portfolio on which they can collect economic returns through rate increases. When a utility does that solely to increase profits rather than to serve genuine system needs, economists call it rent-seeking behavior. Despite the theoretical efficiency of a single planning process, the public nature of the process can also attract long, drawn-out conflicts, particularly in litigious cultures where disputes are solved through adversarial proceedings. Finally, central utility planning, which is always driven by incumbent utilities, may subtly or not so subtly discriminate against non-utility generation through the crafting of the process or in its ultimate decisions. This can have a detrimental effect on renewable energy projects, which are often built by specialist non-utility companies that then contract with the utility to provide energy. The case study of the Lamar wind farm at the end of the economic regulation module illustrates both of the last two risks. Thank you for your attention.